All right. So welcome back to the Pleasure Project with Dr. Jenn Kennedy. My guest today is Ashe Brown. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Jen.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Ashe. She is a spiritual herbalist, serial entrepreneur, visionary, sacred space holder, and curator of healing experiences. She lives in Santa Barbara with her wife of 21 years and their 5-year-old kid. She and her wife own and operate Pura Luna Apothecary, which is an inclusive herbal shop centered around providing accessible healing tools and creating community. They also own Full Spiral Salon, a salon dedicated to uplifting and adorning naturally textured hair. Ashe creates healing spaces and experiences and provides tools for humans to heal, especially women of color. As a childhood cancer survivor and wombless warrior, she had a life-saving hysterectomy at age 36. She has a mission to bridge herbalism, spirituality, and Western medicine to achieve wellness harmony. She believes that we are all the gatekeepers of the future. So when we heal ourselves, we ultimately heal the world. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've watched this journey unfold. I mean, I think we both met in a completely different context over a decade ago, and it's been really cool to see you go along. So tell us a little bit about your journey professionally.
Absolutely. How we met was when I was in our original business, which I was a makeup artist and my wife is still currently a hairstylist, but we did your wedding. And so that was what we did for 14 years. We were on location, hair and makeup, very busy, really couldn't plan a life because we were being booked out a year in advance. And in that whole entire time of being a makeup artist and being an entrepreneur and being, younger, it was definitely a journey into self around so many things. And during that time, Kristen and I, we had already been together at that point, maybe 10 years, and we were really ready to start having a family. And I really wanted to be the one to carry our first child. And for 7 years, I tried to do that, swimming upstream to push my body to do something that it was never going to ever be able to perform. But in that journey and in that spiral of depression and losing myself and losing my identity as a woman and losing the pleasure out of, sex, all of those things, because it became very timed and all of those things, it led me into herbalism. It led me to the plants. It led me to nature and connecting and realizing that I was so out of touch with so many things that were around me and the blessings that were around me. And then also feeling a sense of aloneness, I realized I was never alone. So that's where my spirituality really came into play. So from that, dark place came all of this beautiful light. And once I, really dove into that and started educating myself more and taking more apprenticeships and just studying and working with the spirit of the plants, it really, they started to communicate with me and let me know that it was time for me to switch paths. I thought I was going to be able to do both, but they were not in alignment. And I can get into that a little in a second. But while at the end of my apprenticeship, my herbalism apprenticeship, I just got this download, I have to open up an apothecary in Santa Barbara. And I went through all this imposter syndrome, who do I think I am? I can't do that. But it's just no, Spirit's you have to do this. And everything, and my whole thing is when something's meant to be, it comes with ease, almost too easy. And that's exactly how the apothecary came about was, right around the corner from our original salon, a beautiful cottage just became available. It was another woman in the industry. And she was like, if you want it, it's yours. And I'm like, okay. And then, so we got that without even trying. I just was like, this is where it's going to be. And then we opened with ease and community started showing up and it just became a really beautiful hub. And it has prefaced so much in my life and changed me completely. And I had to give up makeup artistry for a few reasons. I just really noticed that it wasn't fulfilling my sole purpose anymore. Yes, I love adorning other humans and being an artist. Yet a lot of the times, especially with wedding industry, there is, and especially women on their wedding day, there's so much self-deprecation that happens when they don't do the work on themselves to show up. And be who they are naturally on their wedding day and just allow me to enhance that. So it was a lot of can you fix this? I hate this. Oh, ignore this. And I'm like, these women need healing. They don't need makeup. And so I just, it became something soul satisfying for me. So retired from that. And now I get to fully focus on really what my passion and soul calling is.
I see this happen actually in so many variations where one thing leads to the next. right?
Yes.
Like you were always a creative person, and now you've just turned it into this other, incarnation. And yeah, it's like this, and I find it for me, what I've done before informs what I'm doing now and next, and added this layer of spirituality as well as just general healing, right? Healing in a more profound kind of fundamental way, instead of just pretty face one day, right?
Right.
Interesting. Okay. And you and Kristen went in on this venture together.
We did. Kristen was
Mhm.
actually pregnant with our kid at the time. So I
Mhm.
felt like we were both pregnant with this. I was pregnant with Pura Luna and Kristen was
Yeah.
and so they are our twins. They were birds pretty much in the same month of each other. And so that's been a really beautiful parallel and mirror for me as an entrepreneur, is like how fast my kid is growing and how fast the business grew, but also the
Yeah.
patience it takes to and patience and allowance and softening that I have to have in motherhood. I need to also have that with my business, and so it's been a constant lesson in all of that. But yes, Kristen and I definitely were very excited to have this. And I think the other real reason behind all of it, besides wanting to provide tools, was the creation of community. Kristen and I have lived in Santa Barbara for 18 years, and anybody who lives here just knows that the diversity is not as exciting as it could be, and as there's not much representation here. And so for when Quest was, gestating, we're like, we can't do this alone. It takes a village. We have no family here. And so, there's the saying, if you build it, they will come. And so we really called in our community to support. And now Quest has community everywhere. Quest is known everywhere and is loved and celebrated and supported. And that was the real, like, bigger vision too.
Well, and I've seen that play out. You both have consistently offered gatherings at your shop, and tons of people come, and there's all kinds of wonderful vendors there that have like really cool stuff that they've made, and there's music and there's food and there's energy and there's drinks and there's giveaways, and like it's so intentional. It's not just like a party, it's like a party that feels very pro-female and also pro-diversity and empowerment. Like that vibe is apparent.
It's so important for us. It's so important for us. Like you said, Jen, it's like, it's not about just throwing a party. It's about making people feel included in our family. Like, this is something that we are creating together, and like really creating a vibe, especially what we all just went through with so much isolation in these past few years.
Yeah.
It's like, now that we're able to come together and gather a bit more, I can just feel the vibration raising in our community of just people being able to have a conversation and hug one another and dance and celebrate. Like we're doing the work, and so here we are being able to come together and celebrate that.
That's great. And then in terms of kind of the mission of the store and how you carry through kind of those principles into what you stock, how you operate, what you choose, what you include, and then we won't even talk about the retreats yet, but that's coming too. Like how does that play out in terms of mission and who you serve, and that part of it?
Yeah, so part of the mission, so when we originally opened the apothecary, it was known, and the name and title was Women's Apothecary. For me, it was important as a woman, an identified woman, to have sacred, safe space for women to come together to talk about these things that are taboo, that we consider TMI, that we shy away from. So that was like the main goal, was like to get women together, to come together under the full moon, whatever, and to have a place where they could say, something's going down and I don't know what it is, and not feel uncomfortable or shy about it. And then as we grew as a company, it just became, and also just even with our kid, like Quest was born female, but now identifies wholeheartedly, like it's he, him forever, mom. It's just like, I wanted to make sure that my kid knew that this was also an inclusive space. So we dropped the Women's Apothecary, even though our focus is still supporting women through all the, transitions in life. We welcome and support everyone. And so that's kind of like our mission, is to help humans heal themselves. Originally it was helping women heal themselves, but now it's just like humanity needs healing in a deep and immense way. And the ability to provide those tools is like something that's really important for us, by way of whatever those tools may be. And there's no shame in how you choose to support yourself, whether you are taking antidepressants and you want to also work with a gentle nervine in the evening to, help you rest. It's like, we can come together and not have judgment around that. And then also the mission is to stock our shelves and support other minority-owned, women-owned businesses, because, you know, for a long time, it was a male, white-dominated industry of just any business. It was like male and white. And now we're really, as women and as women of color, we're really like trying to show up for ourselves and change and create new generational wealth and different things for our families and opportunities. So it's important for us to be able to kind of create that through line and call that in. And it's been really wonderful.
Yeah, I love the times I've been there, just the curation of items are in the, like for gifts, that's perfect, right? It's like all kinds of things, including like gems, and there's a little section that's beautifully curated, kind of sexuality related sex toys. Talk about that. Like how do you choose the things, and specifically, how do you choose the things that are for sexual health?
So specifically, so like for instance, in our pleasure, so that's our pleasure medicine section, because we do believe that pleasure is medicine. And if you are missing pleasure in your life, that's a major lack of medicine in your life. So we also try to like not create this, like, you know, we've all been into those weird sex shops where it's just like CD and weird and very male like focused, and just like, just get me out of here. So one thing is like there's a women-owned brand called Dame, and they're based out of New York, and they create all our own all sex toys that are for women by women, and you know, for our vulvas and all of those things. Or supporting, we just brought in some other things around just vaginal health and vulval vaginal care, another woman that's based out of the Bay Area. So it's just doing our research. And we also, for our staff meetings, will have these companies come and do a Zoom and talk to us about the history of it and why it's here. And just, and like you said, our shop has become like the gift shop in town. But what I love about it is most people who come in and get a gift, they also leave with something for themselves, because it's so important to give and receive. And we really drive that home too. And so it's intentional gifts. And then also with the pleasure medicine part, it's so awesome when we have like older, mature women like in their 70s come in and want to talk to us about their sexual health and buy a vibrator that's not, you know, the plug in the wall wand. It's something different. And I love that we've created that space for them to feel safe to do that, you know?
So I'm running the Pleasure Circle. It's a 6-week program, and the current one that just wrapped up last night, I've got 1 gal in her 50s, 2 in their 60s, and 2 in their 70s. Like women, like we, through the whole life cycle, sexuality is part of the mix. And I think actually some of the, hopefully some of the self-criticism falls away, and then we really reclaim our bodies if allowed. So I think that's awesome that people of all ages are coming in and looking at, you know, ways to enhance, you know, self-pleasure or pleasure with partners.
Absolutely. Yes. It's such, I feel like that we're in the age of, not only the age of Aquarius, but the age of pleasure, and especially the reclamation of women reclaiming what it means to be in their pleasure, you know, and especially that age range you just described, you know, they were taught to just stand by your man, cater to your man, and forget about your body, just show up, you know? And I think that it's really beautiful to see that's no longer going to be the narrative moving forward, and that they're fixing it now, you know, and working on it now. I think that's really huge. So congrats on that circle. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's just sort of who was drawn to the, I didn't know, but it's definitely leaning towards older, which is great. Okay, so you had talked about in your bio about pleasure being the medicine. So what is the role of herbalism in sexuality for you?
Well, I mean, if we think about the plants in general, plants exude sex. They, you know, when we think about flowers and we think about the spring, and the spring being the time of the bees pollinating and creating and having sex with plants in order to create fruit in the fall, they're all intertwined, you know, there's no difference. And when we look at certain flowers, you know, we see ourselves represented, you know. So with herbalism, you know, something that is really like passionate for me, and when I call myself a spiritual herbalist, is not about what the plant can do for me by way of the constituents and the medicinal properties. It's everything. It's the ability to look at like, so if I were to bring in a plant that's really great for like women's libido and just like interest in sex, would be like Damiana. A lot of people talk about it. It's a herb that's based out of Mexico, and it has these gorgeous yellow flowers. So when I bring in the spirituality spirituality of it, yellow, if we're thinking about the chakra system, is the solar plexus. In order for us to embody and fully like take on our like, to own our pleasure, we have to be solid in our solar plexus to know that we are worthy of it, that we deserve it, that we are proud to own our sexuality. And so this flower is showing me, in that yellow, like, yes, girl, be proud of it, own that, shine your light, be sexy, embody it. And so I get to take on the spirit of this gorgeous yellow flower, but also take in its medicine if I so choose. And so it's just that it's like herbalism and the spirituality of these plants, and then sexuality, they're all mirrors of each other. They're all like, they all represent the same thing,
That makes so much sense. I've thought about that more in the context of like food, cooking, and that type of thing, right? How you vibrationally feel when you're preparing meals, is as much as the quality of the food, right? It's how you feel, but also the somatic piece that comes in sometimes in therapy, in the therapy room, and how the body signals so much of what's happening, right? It's not just the mind, it's the mind-body connection. And so you recognizing the entire experience of the plant and not just ingesting this equals that, it makes sense. And that's part of the ritual, I guess, of it.
Yes.
Right.
And it's part of the connection of it, like, that's like, I know we're going to talk about retreats later, but like, that's the whole purpose of me creating experiences, to reconnect people with the complete full spiral experience of what it means to be in this human body, but also to live on this planet and on our earth, and how we all have the same thing that we see reflected in that flower. We possess those same things. And when we embody that, our bodies take on a completely different characteristics when we connect to that, and not just have expectations that my body's going to just light up and do these things because I'm taking this. It's a whole, mixing bowl,
Well, let's talk about the retreats because you said it. So let's do it. So yeah, so that's sort of the next step for women anybody can come, right? It's not just female.
Yeah. But I only attract the women, which is great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the humans that come to the retreats, what can they expect? And how does it have a factor that's specifically focused on sexuality?
So we're going to be bringing all of that in. So basically my retreat is called elemental healing. So when we think about what the elements are, it's earth, air, it's fire, water, and it's space or ether. Without those things being in harmony, we see what happens when those things are, when there's an overabundance of water, we get floods and we get too much rain. When there's an overabundance of fire, it's just detrimental and there's smoke. So for me, it's about really getting people to understand that these things are no separate. And that when we are imbalanced in that in our nature, and then when we are imbalanced in our own nature, we also see those things. So if we're in overabundance of water in our bodies, we are overly emotional, overly sensitive, crying all the time. What are the tools that can help us kind of like balance that out when we lack water, or when we are stagnant in our energy? There's no movement, our libido is dead, our sexuality is not there. So how can we find those harmonies within that? So that's what the retreat is basically about. It's every day we walk with a particular element. So if it's, fire day, what are we releasing? What are some things that we are passionate about? What lights up our fire? What gives us that solar plexus energy? If we're talking about the water, that's where the pleasure comes in. Water is movement. It's sexy. It's slow. It's whatever. But we've also seen stagnant plant water that stinks. And where are we in our bodies with that? So it's bringing in all of those elements, because again, just like the plants are mirrors of us, same thing with our elements internally and externally. So that's what it's about, and creating those experiences to understand how to create those harmonies and those balances again. So that way we can continue our healing journey when we get home. A lot of the times when you go to retreats, you're like, oh, that was such a healing experience.
Yeah.
And then you come home and then life happens and you're back in your comfort zone. You're back in your pattern. My goal is to like reconnect new things. So that way, when they walk out of their house or they're in their home, they're recognizing and seeing themselves reflected in what's around them, and constantly doing the work and the practice.
Right. And there's a change so that when they reintegrate, that they don't just, all that muscle memory doesn't just go right back to what they've always done. Right. So there's an actual shift that happens. That's cool. And it makes sense, right? For more long-term change, there has to be consistency. So tell me like kind of a snapshot of what happens at a retreat. Like how
So
long is it? How many
yeah,
people?
yeah.
Where?
Okay, so the one that I have happening in 3 weeks, it actually sold out, which I'm really excited about. I keep my retreats small. I've been to bigger retreats where it's like 25 people. And what I've noticed in those bigger retreats, while they do provide a beautiful container, I find that the voices in the room, I don't get to hear from everybody. I don't get to know
Yeah.
everyone. It feels a bit very impersonal to me. So my retreat is capped off at 10 people. And we basically are in a really incredible campus. So one thing that's like really like when people think of retreats, a lot of the time they want to go to like the fancy hotel that has the pool and the cocktails and all of that. No, this is like us being off the grid. You have no cell reception unless you're at the main house. We stay in these beautiful leaf-shaped glamping tents. We are literally amongst nature. This place is called La Senda and it's in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. And what's really amazing about it and what I fell in love with it is it's these two women that are a couple and they basically bought this huge property and they just like the land speaks to them and lets them know what needs to show up. So they built this incredible labyrinth on a vortex. So you feel the energy just swirl. And then right next to it, there is a geodesic dome that is elevated. So you overlook the labyrinth and that's where we do our morning circle. I bring in plant meditations. So plant meditations, and if anybody's ever been to any of my gatherings, it's something that I really love to bring. It's this practice of just taking simple herbs. Because a lot of people think, oh, you're going to do plant medicine. And they're like, oh, is it going to be ayahuasca? And no, we don't need to do that to have a really like prolific experience. So it's literally like sitting with this like plant ally that grows locally and you connecting with the spirit of it and having a journey with just this plant. And the journeys that come through are so profound. And people have these like mesmerizing like moments with these plants and these dances, and it's really really incredible. And so we do that, and then there's somatic movement. I brought in one of my best friends who is my favorite yoga teacher of all time, because it's not just about the asana and the downward dog. It's literally getting into the, like we keep saying, the somatics of the body. And she's even the element of the day. So if we're working with air, how do we take in that breath and really feel it and let it go through all of our cells while we dance with the spirit of the plants? And then I brought in people. One thing that's really important to me, if I'm going to go and do a retreat in someone else's country, I need that country represented, and I need folks from that land to come in and teach us things. So I have a really incredible, different workshops that are going to be happening with the ticos that are there, and for
that's incredible. So you got the local element. You're right. So it's more dimension.
So much dimension. We do sweat lodges like that. I really want to bring in these indigenous practices, because before we, separated and, went into our homes, we were outside in nature. We were sweating together. We were looking at the stars. We were connecting with each other and to the land. And so that's really what is the retreat. And what's also really beautiful about this is that it's farm to table. So where we sit and eat, the food is literally grown right behind us. It's an incredible experience. So I'm really excited. And this year is my second year doing it. And it's just,
Which also strikes me as a way that you circle back to that mission of incorporating community and collaboration, right? You do it here in Santa Barbara. You also do it in the retreats, as you bring in that local element and have it feel like it's wraparound. Right. It's not just this one thing that we hand you, right? It's not just a pill. It's not a pill at all. Actually, it's an experience that you then, that becomes you, and that feels totally different.
Exactly. Yes. It's so important. It's so important for people to have an experience that's immersive, not just what I created, but literally what we can as a community can create to help these 10 women who said yes to themselves leave with so much more than what there's a lot of control that can happen when you get the ego involved. Well, I can do that. I could do that workshop. I want to bring that in. I want to pay you to do these things, because I want to be a very well-rounded experience for all.
Yeah. Walking into a retreat, it's handing over like control, right? You're not trying to run the show. You're actually just so grateful to plug into someone else's, programming and vision and opportunity. Yeah. That's wonderful. Thinking about sort of the sexual side of things. So for those who can't go on the retreat, but that want to, get some support from you guys, what are some ideas you have in terms of, you've got the pleasure medicine section, also, herbal things that they could come to the store for maybe, or self-care practices that you would suggest, like in your experience, that are helpful for that sexual healing?
Yeah, I mean, sex can be such a triggering thing for so many people, especially if
Yeah.
you've had bad experiences or you just don't have a connection to yourself. Um, I've been really incorporating the practice of just finding pleasure in the little things. And really taking time in the present to be in my pleasure. So it doesn't, and that was one thing that I had to really learn. I think post hysterectomy for me was like giving my pleasure, like my desire for pleasure to somebody else to make that happen for me. And then, but then having this disconnect that I get to create that for myself and I get to have access to that any time of the freaking day. Right.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to necessarily lead to sex. It could just be the desire of something, the desire
Yeah.
to eat beautiful food, this plate of food in front of me. Let me just stare at you like, damn, like that is something that we have access to, but we don't really allow ourselves time to be present with the pleasure of this cup of coffee in the morning, the smell of it, the aroma, the cream mixing. Like there's so much sexiness in our day-to-day life that we just overlook. So once I tapped into that, and that was also like our couples therapist homework to me was like, Ash, just what does it feel like to be in desire all the time? Not actually getting it, but just desiring it. And so that is
Mhm.
such a fun exercise for
The
me.
wanting, the
The
wanting,
wanting, yes,
yeah, the anticipation, the gratitude, that whole vibe, right? That's because the like secret is that sex therapy is not about sex.
right.
It is about all the other stuff that brings you into a space where you have receptivity for interaction and intimacy.
Yes, yes,
So that's why all this is so important, right? Is it's primers that make you more open to the idea of taking in pleasure and therefore allowing desire, because
yeah,
desire usually precedes arousal.
yep. And
Yeah.
desire is a muscle you got to flex regularly. It's
Mhm.
something, because we kind of think that it has to be something that in the moment we want the desire, but
Yeah.
no, it's a muscle you build all day, every day.
Well, and it's a way of living,
Yes.
right? You can't just like, I mean, men for the most part can flip a switch and just, be in arousal, but women, it's a long runway. So
Mhm.
you've got to set the table. You've got to be doing these things more as a practice so
Yep.
that you can have allowance, because for the most part, sex is optional,
Mhm.
right? So it's more of it's a state of mind that desire occurs when you've got some of these other criteria met.
Yes. And like you said, it is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate having you here. And I so appreciate having you in Santa Barbara, because it's a real gift to have you guys.
I really appreciate you.
Um, so let's see. Listeners can find you online at Pura Luna Apothecary, Puralunaapothecary. That's a hard one. So I'm just
It's
going to
a
spell it.
mouthful, y'all.
Pura Luna
Yes.
Apothecary. So find them on Instagram. You can also find PuraLunaApothecary.com if you want to find their store, or in Santa Barbara. You can find them. And I so appreciate having you. And is there anything else that you want to, like, you said your next retreat is sold out. Is there anything else you want to let us know about coming up?
I mean, if you live locally, we do events all the time. And so just stay tuned, join our newsletter, so that way you can be in the know. If you don't live locally, we do happily ship anything. So just let us know. And yeah, just thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate the time and the platform to talk about these important topics. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Okay.